President Trump, in his third address to the nation tonight, just short of about an hour and a half, as we watch the interaction here. It comes in the middle of a huge week for the president as he hits his highest approval ratings in Gallup today.
Let me just interrupt. Did you just see how Speaker Nancy Pelosi ripped up the speech right behind the president as he's still there?
I missed that moment as he was... Oh, wow. That's something. That is something. And they had an interesting moment like that on the way in, which I was just about to mention as well. He's on the eve of his likely acquittal in the Senate tomorrow. But the speech, as I was just going to say, began with a bit of an awkward moment. The speaker extended her hand after the transfer of the speech, and then he appeared to turn away. At any rate, she sat stone-faced, really, throughout most of the speech. But the president began by lauding the success of the economy as the great American comeback, as he called it, saying the years of economic decay are over.
You can tell that man behind the mask is Rand Paul. A bunch of protesters descending on the Kentucky senator and his wife Kelly as they left the president's RNC speech from the White House. Actually, it was a longer trip than that. He joins us right now for his first live interview since that confrontation. Senator, good morning. That looked scary.
Yeah, you know, my wife and I, it was horrific. You know, we had two women with us who were friends of ours. We had looked out, you know, we came out of the speech
at the White House.
We looked into the street. Our hotel was only right across the street from the White House, but we couldn't go because the mob was already chasing people down that chose to go out that exit. So the Secret Service says, get on a bus and ride to the Trump Hotel. So we got on a bus. It took 45 minutes to get through all the mobs. We get there safely, and then we say we'll get an Uber to go all the way back where we came from, and we wanted to be dropped off at the hotel. But as we got close to it, the streets were blocked and no one would let us through. And what happened is there was 2 blocks, and I regret that I made this decision, but I said we're going to walk the 2 blocks. We walked 1 block, but as we walked 1 block, we could see some police in the distance, but we also saw a mob of about 30 people marching and yelling. They all of a sudden saw me right as we got to the policeman, fortunately, or I don't think we'd have survived. We got to the policeman, and the policeman, I don't think, recognized me. And as they came closer, they were shouting my name, and the crowd doubled to 60. And then it doubled again to 120. And as they were surrounding us, and it got closer and closer, and everybody kept pushing back, the policemen were forming a barricade with their bodies. I whispered to the policeman, they know who I am. You've got to get reinforcements. It's going to get worse. He called for reinforcements, but we didn't get any reinforcements. We waited, but the crowd was getting bigger and bigger and pushing in. They were yelling threats. They were trying to push the police over to get to me. They were grabbing at us. And it got worse and worse and worse. And then finally we decided to make a move. I said, we've got to move. If there's not going to be reinforcements, we have to try to get to the hotel, which was another block. And they were shouting threats, you know, to us, to kill us, to hurt us. But they're also shouting, say her name, Breonna Taylor. And it's like, you couldn't reason with this mob, but I'm actually the author of the Breonna Taylor law to end no-knock raids. So the irony is lost on these idiots that they're trying to kill the person who's actually trying to get rid of no-knock raids. And they were shouting and screaming and just, really, these people were unhinged. But I can't tell you how, I'm not sure we would have made it. So as we're walking, sort of surrounded by the police, they're attempting to push the police over to get to me. So at one point, they push a policeman backwards. He stumbles, and he's trying to catch his balance, and I catch the back of his flak jacket to stabilize him and, you know, make sure that he's okay, because he's our defense. I mean, if he's down, the mob's loose on us. And you've seen the pictures of what they do to you. If the police are not there, if you defund the police, if we become Portland, if America becomes Portland, what's going to happen is people are going to be pummeled and kicked in the head and left senseless on the curb. That would have happened to us. I promise you, had we not had the D.C. police to support us, I mean, we are thankful that we have police, and we've got to wake up. We can't have the whole country. We can't have Joe Biden rule the country and have no police. I mean, we can't walk down the street in D.C. safely now. That's how bad it is.
I saw one police officer was actually using his bicycle to try to keep the crowd back. He fell into you. You almost stumbled and fell down. You and your wife are both okay, right?
We were unharmed, but, you know, it's still going on this morning. There's still mobs in the street blocking the streets. And I know it sounds like over the top to say that people are from out of town, but I think we're going to find out that these people are hired and from out of town. Specifically in our case, I believe there are going to be people who were involved with the attack on us that actually were paid to come here, are not from Washington, D.C., and are sort of paid to be anarchists.
Yeah.
This is disturbing because really if you're inciting a riot, that's a crime. But if you're paying someone to incite a riot, that person needs to go to jail as well. But we can't live this way. It's getting worse and worse. You know, I like being free to be able to walk out and go for a walk in the park. We cannot go outside now. It's become so dangerous for us. And I don't hear Joe Biden or Kamala Harris saying one thing about the violence. Yeah. This mob is their voters. This is the new Democrat Party. And if we don't resist this, the United States is going to become Portland. We're going to become Chicago. All of these failed cities Democrats have run, the president said it in his speech. If we allow them to take over the White House, we are going to become Portland. The country will be on fire. We have to have law and order, and we have to support the police. You know, I can't say that strong enough.
Senator, some of the papers today are reporting that what was being yelled at you was, as you said, say her name, Breonna Taylor. You know, you said there were obscenities. I would not like you to repeat those, but you said there were threats. Tell us what the threats were.
Well, the threats were to F you up, to kill you. The threats were if they could get hold of you, and I truly believe this with every fiber of my being, had they gotten at us, they would have gotten us to the ground. We might not have been killed. We might just have been injured by being kicked in the head or kicked in the stomach until we were senseless. You've seen the pictures. Most of the networks will not show the pictures of this. This is happening in all of our cities. It's got to stop. And thank God for the police. Had we not gotten to the police, I truly believe that the police saved our life, and we would not be here today, or we'd be in a hospital today had the police not been there. And I'd like to thank them if they're watching this. We thanked them last night, but it was still a melee. They were still trying to get people, away from us. Even in the hotel, people were following us into the hotel.
Well, let me ask you this as an exit question. Given the fact that you said that these people are still on the streets, protesters are still on the streets, and we heard from Griff Jenkins about a half an hour ago that apparently a number of the businesses in Washington, D.C. are boarded up because they're worried about trouble going forward. Does a prominent Republican like yourself, somebody who is very recognizable, need to have security to simply walk on the streets of Washington, D.C. or major cities in America?
Probably yes, from now on. I don't feel it at home. At home, people are so friendly. I can go to the grocery store, and I want to live, the life of a normal person where I go to the grocery store and buy groceries or stop at the Minute Mart. And at home, I do feel that. But this also isn't normal. There's something going on here. This is like the FBI needs to be involved.
What do you mean something's going on? Senator, what do you mean something's going on? You've got a feeling. Tell us what you think.
My feeling is that there is interstate criminal traffic being paid for across state lines, but you won't know it unless you arrest them. Otherwise, you just think, oh, these are some normal hoodlums from a big city. I promise you that at least some of the members and the people who attacked us were not from D.C. They flew here in a plane. They've all got fresh new clothes, and they were paid to be here. It is a crime to do that, and it needs to be traced. The FBI needs to investigate, but the only way you can do it is you have to arrest people. And usually we say, oh, well, you didn't get hurt, so we're not going to arrest them. They were inciting a riot, and they would have killed us had the police not been there. They all need to be arrested, and I'm not saying forever, but they need to be arrested, questioned. They need to say, where are you staying? And the bills need to be subpoenaed by a judge to say, who paid for your bill? How did you get here on a plane and staying in a fancy hotel, and yet you're acting like a criminal? Something's going on here, and it's much bigger than people think. But the bottom line is we can't let the United States become Portland, and that's what my fear is, that the United States is going to be on fire if we have no police. And look, I've been for reform. I've authored 22 criminal justice reforms. They were yelling at me, we're not going to let you go alive unless you'll say out loud you're for criminal justice reform. And I'm like, you idiot. You are so dense that you have no idea that I've been a leading advocate for criminal justice reform with President Obama, with President Trump, and you're going to try to kill me, and I've been trying to help the problems. And so this is what's sad, but it's such lawlessness. If we have this kind of lawlessness, I would say people are going to get killed. People have been killed. You know, the former police chief, his story was, so sorrowful to listen to his wife last night that was killed in St. Louis. Yeah. You know, the little girl, Sequoia Turner, 8 years old, was shot in the middle of the day in Atlanta because they took a wrong turn. But the police, they had let the mob take over a street corner armed. We can't let our cities be taken over by these marauders and thugs.
Well, we are glad you are safe, you and your wife, Kelly, and we thank you very much for coming on to tell us your story. Let's see what happens next. Let's see if there is some sort of an investigation or if it just disappears, as he did right there. All right, Senators, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rudy Giuliani, and I'm the former mayor of New York City. In 2013, my city elected a self-described progressive Democrat as mayor. New York City, once described as America's crime capital, had become, by the mid-1990s, America's safest large city. Now today, my city is in shock. Murders, shootings, and violent crime are increasing at percentages unheard of in the past. We're seeing the return of rioting and looting. During riots, this Democrat mayor, like others, has often prevented the police from making arrests. And even when arrests are made, liberal, progressive DAs release the rioters so as not to disrupt the rioting. New Yorkers wonder, how did we get overwhelmed by crime so quickly and decline so fast? Don't let Democrats do to America what they have done to New York. Again, the Democrats are urging you to vote for an obviously defective candidate. Biden has changed his principles so often, he no longer has any principles. He's a Trojan horse with Bernie, AOC, Pelosi, Black Lives Matter, and his party's entire left wing, just waiting to execute their pro-criminal, anti-police socialist policies. The whole unprecedented wave of lawlessness began with a truly just cause: the unforgivable police killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Peaceful protests began all over the land. The condemnation of the killing was universal, from President Trump to Democrat leaders. It seemed, for a few brief shining moments, Democrat and Republican leaders would come together with a unified proposal to reduce police misconduct. This possibility was very dangerous to the left. They had a president to beat and a country to destroy. And although an agreement on action against police brutality would be very valuable for the country, it would also make President Trump appear to be an effective leader. They could have none of that. So Black Lives Matter and Antifa sprang into action, and in a flash, they hijacked the peaceful protests into vicious, brutal riots. Soon, protests turned into riots in many other American cities, almost all Democrat. Businesses were burned and crushed, people beaten, shot and killed, police officers routinely assaulted, badly beaten, and occasionally murdered, and the police handcuffed by progressive Democrat mayors from doing anything but observe the crimes and absorb the blows. But the worst of it was the slaughter of innocent young people with their whole lives ahead of them. The murder of 4-year-old LeGrand Talfaro in Kansas City shocked the nation, but not Black Lives Matter or their many Democrat supporters. 17-year-old basketball star Brandon Hendricks was killed in the Bronx just days after graduating high school and on his way to St. John's to play basketball. He passed with only a brief mention. 1-year-old Davil Gardner Jr. was shot and killed in a stroller at a cookout in Brooklyn, and it caused no outrage. For President Trump and for us Republicans, all Black lives matter, and the lives of LeGrand and Brandon and Davil matter to us. All lives matter to us. These continuous riots in democratic cities gives you a good view of the future under Biden. All 5 of the top cities for homicides, like the top cities for rioting and looting, are governed by progressive Democrats, using the progressive Democrat approach to crime, which is to do nothing substantive to reduce it, to release prisoners, as many and as soon as possible, and to go to war with the police, the only group with the capability to protect your citizens. It is clear that a vote for Biden and the Democrats creates the risk that you will bring this lawlessness to your city, to your town, to your suburb. There is no question that this awesome job of restoring safety for our people cannot be done from your basement, Joe. There's also no question that President Trump will fight with all his strength to preserve the American system of government and our way of life. In critical times in our history, America has always been blessed with the right person to handle the crisis. Washington, Lincoln, Roosevelt, Reagan were perfect for the challenges they faced and brought our nation through gloriously. President Trump, with his boundless love of our country and all our people, his disciplined work ethic, his exceptional ability to inspire, and his deep understanding of our system of government and the strength of American values, is the man we can trust to preserve and even improve our way of life. Mr. President, make our nation safe again.
General Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, was responding to questions submitted by 2 members of Congress, Elisa Slotkin of Michigan and Mickey Sherrill of New Jersey, who were apparently recruiting the general's support for a military coup. These 2 were amongst the first to call for the impeachment of the president last year for investigating Joe Biden's ties to the Ukraine. In a Washington Post op-ed, 7 freshman Democrats, all former military and intelligence operatives, claimed to be a group of unified U.S. patriots sworn to save America from Donald Trump. Abigail Spanberger and Elisa Slotkin were featured in headlines 3 years ago. Ex-CIA officers running for Congress as Democrats. The article cited the unfounded Russia hoax as the inspiration for these so-called patriotic CIA operatives to run for office. NBC wrote that these CIA agents were fed up with the president, and their new mission was to foil Trump. The move by the CIA to run agents in the 2018 elections came almost immediately after the president ordered devastating bombings of Afghanistan heroin operations, an operation that many believe was run by the CIA. This is not surprising. The CIA has been involved in the international opium market since their inception in 1947, when agency operatives worked with the Italian mafia and used heroin profits as CIA funding. Slotkin and Sherrill were not the first to request the U.S. military's assistance in their coup d'etat against President Trump. On August 11th, a lifetime member of the Council on Foreign Relations, along with a former lieutenant colonel of the Army, wrote an open letter to General Milley. Like out of a Philip K. Dick novel, they predicted that Trump was mobilizing a secret army and threatened that General Milley would be guilty of treason if he would not help them remove the president from office. The publication of General Milley's response to these CIA operatives is a sign of the American deep state's weakness.
Secret society, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding. From that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people, where I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed. I not only could not stifle controversy among your readers, I welcome it. This administration intends to be candid about its errors. For as a wise man once said, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We intend to accept full responsibility for our errors, and we expect you to point them out when we miss them. Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. And that is why our press was protected by the First Amendment, the only business in America specifically protected by the Constitution, not primarily to amuse and entertain, not to emphasize the trivial and the sentimental, not to simply give the public what it wants, full-on riot, to arouse, that's all it takes. To reflect, to state our dangers and our opportunities, to indicate our crises and our choices, to lead, mold, educate, and sometimes even anger.
Oh, hold on, I need that battery, I need that cord. Give me the cord, give me the cord, give me the cord.
Greater coverage and analysis of international news.
How does that attach to anything? It is no longer far away
and foreign, but close at hand and local. It means greater attention to improved understanding of the news, as well as improved transmission. And it means, finally, that government at all levels must meet its obligation to provide you with the fullest possible information outside the narrowest limits of national security. And so it is to the printing press, to the recorder of man's deeds.
Yeah, all these cars are going up. I mean, they don't get the fire department out here right away.
That we look
they got a dumpster fire going up there. Hey, you guys, sorry about cutting out. Like and share this stream.
Man will be what he was born to be.
There's like 7 cars at least that are burning in there.
And then there's in the back too.
A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action, so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction. Our military organization today bears little relation to that known of any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II
hey,
or
guys,
Korea.
sorry, let's get that stream back up.
Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry.
And you got these cars just
American
exploding
makers
over
of
here,
plowshares could,
I mean, there's
with
1, 2,
time
3,
and
4,
as
5,
required,
6,
make
7,
swords
8,
as well.
9, 10, 11
But we
cars
can no
over here
longer
that are-
risk emergency improvisation of national defense.
You can hear those cars just
We have been
exploding,
compelled
guys.
to
That is
create a
insane.
permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and
Catching this
women
visual here.
are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone,
I mean,
more than the net
this whole
income
lot,
of
like I
all
said, is gonna go
United
up.
States corporations. Now, this conjunction
gonna
of
go
an
car to
immense
car to car to
military
car. You can already hear
establishment
it in
and
the
a
distance
large
exploding.
arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
Appreciate that.
We must never let the weight of
that's
this
a sign that
combination
this one right
endanger
over
our
here that's
liberties
gone now.
or democratic process.
That one used to say Black Lives
We
Matter.
should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense
what people are saying is
with
this
our
never was
peaceful
peaceful. A man was
methods and
murdered.
goals,
Was
so
killed.
that security
Sorry,
and
I gotta
liberty
about my wording.
may prosper
A man
together.
was killed. Are you still getting me there? Let's walk over this way real quick. And all around here, guys, there's every building around here has been broken into, looted. Oh. Oh.
Give me death! This is not, you want peace! This is my city! We're ready! We'll be back tomorrow! We're ready! 400 years! 1619! 2020!
Free in day 4 of anarchy. Atlanta, CNN headquarters and police under attack.
There's something on fire, Chris, a firecracker. Something's on fire.
Nick, you all right?
Police cars smashed, torched. Shops looted. The National Guard called in. Los Angeles, a single officer set upon trying to make an arrest.
The mob starts beating the officer. Look at that officer by himself there.
Dragged out, he collapses. Tonight, downtown shops are being looted. In Washington, the White House briefly on lockdown. Crowds surge barricades, delivering fury to the president's front door. A nationwide fire, and where the first match was lit, George Floyd! Minneapolis looks like and feels like an active battleground.
It's almost 8 o'clock at night here, so a citywide curfew is about to go into effect. But as you can see, these protesters are showing no signs of letting up. They're now firing, throwing projectiles at these police officers, and they're retreating.
Minnesota State Patrol, you are in violation of unlawful assembly.
facing off.
Quite literally, we are here downtown in the second biggest city in America, and this is the scene starting here. Protesters have set this skip bin on fire. Police were able to drive them back. There's a line of police just back there. Firefighters have only just arrived to try and put that out. All emergency services have been under threat. Firefighters have had their hoses set on fire. Paramedics have had trouble getting into places too. We look over the road. That's a chemist over there. When we showed up here about 20 minutes ago, that was being looted. Those windows have been smashed. People were in there taking stuff out of the chemist. We move around. This is the rest of the emergency response. They've made it to this